This is Marshall Jones. I'm the managing editor of InfoNews.ca. I'm with our Kelowna reporter, Rob Monroe, and our Kamloops reporter, Levi Landry. You guys, we've got a pretty exciting year in 2024 as far as provincial politics are concerned. We should have an election coming up no later than October 19th. And I think for the first time, certainly in Kelowna, Rob, this could be the first time, at least that I've been in here. I've been here 23 years. This will be the first time any of the candidates, if the polls are to be believed, and they've been wrong before, but this will be the first election where we've actually got a chance that the BC Liberals, now BC United, the incumbent candidates, not even the incumbent candidates, just the candidates, appear to be under some threat.
Well, the polls seem to say that, but this has been such a hotbed for the Liberals, Socrates before then, that we really need some strong candidates to come forward. We don't necessarily have that in two of the riders. We've got the incumbent Bernie Merrifield. We've got a West Kelowna city councillor possibly running in Kelowna West, but the other two, we don't know what's happening in Kelowna Centre yet, the new riding. That is still up in the air. Kelowna Lake Country, where Norm Lutnick retired, it's a relatively unknown candidate that's coming forward.
Well, there's still a lot that's unknown, and including you know, the viability, the veracity of these polls that are out there. There seems to be a lot of suggestion that voters themselves are confused with the name change from the BC Liberals, which they never should have had that name to begin with. I'm not sure how that even came about. What do you think, Rob? Is it the BC Conservatives piggybacking on the federal Conservatives?
Well, that's what Kevin Falcon, BC United leader, seems to be saying, but I give people a little more credit for intelligence to know that there is a difference there. But the other wild card here is the NDP, which is strong provincially and is virtually invisible in these ridings. If they could come up with a strong candidate, that could make some good three-way races.
What about over in Kamloops there, Levi? Kamloops got a little more sort of a rainbow history. I think they've elected NDPs, they've elected Liberals, they've elected Conservatives, certainly more conservative in the last 20, 25 years. What's going on out there?
Well, if we look back recent history, you're going back to the 90s before you find an elected candidate who wasn't here for the BC Liberals. It's been pretty consistent BC Liberals for all of the 2000s, and that's what we're going to have. The incumbents, they're going to be running in the next election. So you've got Todd Stone, currently in the Kamloops South riding, and we have Peter Milobar, former mayor, in the Kamloops North riding. Those guys, they're going to switch their seats, but they're both going to be running in the next election.
So you still have some strong names, some incumbents who've been around for a little while. Those guys have been obviously leading the charge for the BC United Party. This Conservative Party that has seemed to come up out of nowhere. Do you see them being much of a challenge? They seem to be a little more active in Kamloops than they are even in Kelowna at this point.
They are to some degree. They made the announcements a few months back that they have organized riding associations. They've got we have contacts for their riding presidents. I spoke with their regional director, Coralie Delwo, whose name is familiar in Kamloops. She said they're going through a vetting process at the moment, wasn't prepared to make any announcements on any nominations, let alone candidates for the parties. I still think, though, that, you know, as you touched on earlier, piggybacking on the Conservatives federally, I think they're going to have a strong possibility in Kamloops for our two ridings.
Well, Rob touched on it earlier where we're talking about whether or not this is even viable. Like, we've seen this from the Conservatives before, where they kind of rise up a little bit just before the election time, and then they I think they still have not actually elected an MLA in BC. But if there's anything that suggests to me that these polls are real, it is that a bit of that ground game. Like there seems to be a little more activity from the BC Conservatives. They seem to be a little more organized. They have 2 MLAs right now, so they're getting some funding now that they have party status. Rob, are you seeing any of that in Kelowna? Are you seeing any of that activity? It seems to be a little more quiet here, at least in terms of the BC Conservatives.
It does seem to be quiet. They do have one candidate come forward for Kelowna West, Macklin McCall, former RCMP officer. But I think the wild card here is a bit about the popularism of Pierre Poilievre and the sort of what some would think of the more radical right, the freedom people who are so opposed to Trudeau, and I think that carries over a little bit into anti-establishment. And this riding is sort of a hotbed for that sentiment. So we could see that emerging. It just hasn't surfaced very much.
You know, I can see a lot of Conservatives right now sort of weighing their options as to which one fits their brand of politics better and which one has the better chance of winning. And this bit of momentum could be making a lot of people difficult decisions.
And we had some fairly strong, visible candidates putting their names forward initially for the Kelowna Lake Country Coldstream riding, and they dropped out. Does that mean they're not going to come back, or do you have an Adam Wilson, who's a very strong Conservative background, saying that maybe I need to go a little further in a different direction? Mohini Singh, a city councillor here, dropped out, but she seemed to have some reservations about being the BC United being E2 right for her. But she may not.
Well, I'm not sure that's what she said. She said something along the lines of she didn't like the tenor of that campaign. I'm not sure how much I necessarily agree with that, but I think there are other candidates who were in that, and it was supposed to be sort of a high profile candidacy, sort of a debate for whoever was going to end up carrying the flag. A lot of those big names pulled out. I do have it on some authority that at least one of them pulled out because they're not sure anymore about the BC United chance in these ridings. So I think there's a lot of people who are looking at that. And you're right, Rob, that could leave a spot if the BC Conservatives split that vote on the right and enough people stay with BC United. Perhaps we could see an NDP MLA in Kelowna for the first time ever. But we have not seen a lot from the NDP. Levi, you spoke with somebody from the NDP today. What did they tell you about their campaign plans?
I spoke with Rick Turner. He's president for the Kamloops North Thompson riding. He said to me it will probably be sometime April or May before we hear of a candidate chosen for that riding. Now that riding is one that had a very good chance in the last election, narrowly being defeated by Peter Millibar. Former city councillor Sadie Hunter lost by less than 200 votes running for the NDP. So they're going to feel pretty strong, pretty confident coming into that riding, I believe.
And then Peter and Todd switched those ridings?
And Peter and Todd switched the ridings. So there was a bit of a boundary change. The new Kamloops Center, formerly Kamloops South, has a little bit more of the city of Kamloops within its boundaries. And Peter Millibar being the former mayor of the city, I would presume that the party feels a little more confident in the familiarity locally with Peter Millibar's name. So he's been switched over to Kamloops South, whereas Todd Stone, the current House leader for the party, he'll be running in the North Thompson.
So what do you think here, guys? You got any early projections as to what's going to happen here? Start with you, Rob.
Well, the surprising thing in these ridings is the NDP is silent. They were talking about having somebody out by the end of Christmas or the end of the year. If they wait till April to try to build a profile, it's just too late, and they're just going to be also lands. And unless the Conservatives can come out with, some name candidates like city councilors, some other people that have a visibility in this community. I'm thinking it's going to be pretty well the same old, except it's called BC United instead of BC Liberal.
I actually got to admit, sorry to derail this a little bit, but some of the candidates, I've been looking at some of their local candidates around here, and I was sort of expecting, People's Party sort of candidates, that level of, I've never done anything in politics, or, I have no idea how any of this works, but go ahead and vote for me type of people. They've actually got some decent names. They've got some people with some reputation, some background, some credibility. It's going to be interesting. Levi.
I am hesitant to make a projection. I'm often wrong when I make a projection for the upcoming election. But what I do feel pretty confident about is that it's going to be a much tighter race in a region that has been fairly traditionally BC Liberal. Todd Stone has won with a majority every time he's run since
Majority meaning 50% plus of
50% plus, exactly. And I think it's going to be a much tighter race for both ridings, Kamloops Center and North Thompson. Whoever's going to pull through, it's too early to say, especially while we're waiting on both parties to come up with a candidate. But I don't think the BC United has such a confident footing in Kamloops as they might have in years past.
And for us who get to cover this stuff, hey, we might even have fun during a provincial election campaign for once, when it's not completely foreseen well in advance. Thanks, guys.